Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to assume that I'm preaching to the converted here. It may not be the case with everybody here, but we'll see how we go. Vision 2070, 50 years from now, how much of the Adelaide Parklands will be left? How many of those green spaces will remain green? Your guess is as good as mine. I would hope as many as possible, and perhaps some of the areas that have been greyed out might be returned to green, but I wouldn't be holding my breath on it. I might just come back here and just talk a little bit about the Adelaide Parklands Association. There was another slide that I wanted to put in there. What we do, we've got a strategic plan which commits us to 4 what we call streams of activities. First one is explore. We offer guided walks in the parklands because you wouldn't believe how many people live here and don't know what they've got around the city. Never walked through, we're in the environmental trail, for example. So explore. The next one is inspire. We try to inspire people with something as simple as the Parklands Photo of the Day, videos about the parklands, and twice every 2 years an Adelaide Parklands Art Prize, which is one of the richest art prizes in the state. So that's explore and inspire. The third arm of what we do is protect. And that's what we're doing a lot of right at the moment, protecting the parklands from incursions, attacks. And the fourth one is restore. It's a very new thing, but we are starting to get traction with restoring even a very, very small part of the parklands. And Stephanie, who you've just heard from, is leading that with a tiny little patch of bitumen off Port Road in Park 27. And then we do clean-up days occasionally in the parks. So explore, inspire, protect, restore. That's us. All right, we're going to talk about protect. Now, you might have seen, I don't suppose anybody here is unfamiliar with the current state government's rezoning plans for 4 different areas of the riverbank part of the parklands. That's the area with the dark black hatched lines. Now what follows is I've lifted entirely from a presentation to the Adelaide Parklands Authority. It's public knowledge. It was published on the minutes of the Parklands Authority meeting back in late September, I think, about the 23rd of September. You can see this anytime online, and I'm just going to rattle through it. Reading words on the screen is not really inspiring, but that's what the Parklands Authority was advised would be happening. The consultation period has now expired. That was last Wednesday, the 27th of October. And there's going to be, according to the government, 4 new subzones overlaid over the existing parklands zone. And aspects of planning code for the subzones will take precedence over what was there before, a parkland zone. So when I'm talking to people who are not planners, I just say, what is the point of changing the zoning of parklands? It's to build stuff that wouldn't be permitted otherwise. The government says, we're not planning to do X, Y, Z. Well, maybe not, but that's the whole point of the change. And these are the areas that are targeted. On the left, health. The green part is riverbank, and the entertainment area includes, but is not limited to, the site of the proposed $660 million, 15,000-seat stadium that the Premier calls the Riverbank Arena. And what keeps getting ignored is on the far right-hand side, innovation subzone. If you go down Frome Road towards the Frome Road Bridge over the river, nearly all of the parklands on both sides of the road, but particularly I'm thinking about on the right-hand side of the road as you go down towards the river, have been built upon over the years, over the last 180 years. But there's a tiny little patch of green left between the new Botanic High School and whatever they're building where the dental school used to be, and they want to take that too. Too much green. So that's the current zoning, and that's the extra bits that they want to rezone. Just compare the two, there and there. So there's going to be very little left between North Terrace and the river that isn't zoned for development. That's the government's vision. And I emphasise the word vision because I'm going to come back to that. Going into each of the zones in detail, in this zone, the new Health and Biomedical Precinct zone, this includes the Old Adelaide Jail, which is going to be rezoned as health. I kid you not. I mean, I don't think anyone can object to a heritage building having new uses, or maybe some people can, but I'm not particularly concerned about that myself. And if they can find some use for the Old Adelaide Jail that is sympathetic to its history and that can be converted for, I'm presuming, if it's zoned health, they might put, consulting rooms in there or some other medical facilities. That's one thing. That zone alone is 22 hectares and possible building height of 15 levels, 53 metres. And of course, it's not just the Adelaide Jail, it's all that land area around it. It would affect where, say, Polkeep there graze, the horses, and the compound which is just to the west of the Old Adelaide Jail's west wall, and what's known as Kate Cox Park, which is managed by the City Council, and there's a formal request from the State Government for the City Council to hand over to the State Government Kate Cox Park. Reinforces what I've said. Now we move to the entertainment zone, which is that area marked in red on that map there, including but not limited to the site of in light blue, that's where the Premier wants to put the $660 million stadium that would replace the entertainment centre at Hindmarsh. I'm advised by City of Adelaide arborists that there are 247 trees in that area, including 131 river red gums, about 40 odd river she oaks, and a lot more besides, and not all of them would be destroyed. That's about the best you can say about that. They might leave some, but the images that have been... it's going to keep one in the Burnside Shopping Centre, weren't they? The images that have been released of the Premier's proposed Riverbank Arena show it extending right to the river's edge, and that's, of course, where most of the trees are, right near the river's edge. The Premier calls that area degraded, and it's true that some part of that area is degraded, but most of it is not. Most of it is beautiful riverine environment. If you've ever walked, I ride my bike along there on the riverfront all the time, so I'm very familiar with the trees on both sides of the path. And there's two rowing clubs there, yes, the Pontney Grammar Rowing Club and the Riverside Rowing Club, and I believe that the State Government strategy is to divide and conquer, and they've been unofficially advised at least that the two rowing clubs will have brand new premises built for them, and so some members of the rowing club are in support of what the government's proposing and some are not. They wouldn't take a formal position one way or the other at the moment anyway. So this is the entertainment precinct, and in the entertainment precinct, I always thought Hindley Street was the entertainment precinct, but hey, we could have another entertainment precinct along the river with nightclubs and what have you, possible building height 20 stories. The government says we're not planning to do any of this at the moment, but of course, once you change the zone, anything's possible. These are envisaged land uses for the entertainment precinct. Over on the right-hand side, arena, community centre, consulting rooms, blah, 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 including land division. Land division is the really big one, because if you're going to divide the land, it really means you're thinking of selling it off. Why that? Why you need to have land division in a park, preschool, serviced apartments, shops, tourist accommodation, light industry. This is the government's vision. What a great idea. We should suggest that. Colonel Light Industry. This is the government's vision, and I keep coming back to that word, vision. The members of the Parklands Authority were asked for their views. Over on the right, the proposed innovation precinct, I've already mentioned that. It's the area in between the new Botanic High School and what they now call Lot 14, used to be called the old RAH site. And the Botanic High School itself was a duplication of a building that was already there. So they doubled the size of it to build a new high school, which itself encroached on parklands. And now what little is left is really just a gateway between Frome Road and the Botanic Garden. And yes. Yep, exactly. That's what it's called now. It's what they've left. But for how much longer, one wonders. First line there, the land of Botanic High School would be taken out of the parkland zone. I mean, it's a bit ironic that it is still a parkland zone when it's been built over with a Botanic High School, but it is nevertheless in that zone. And as it says there, a zone change is not needed to enable continuation of Botanic High, because they've already put it there. And it's only 2 to 3 hectares, but they still want it to be rezoned. And this is what they could put in that area. If they ever decided to knock down the Botanic High School, or even if they want to use the area right next to it for perhaps, I don't know, a helicopter landing facility, a museum, light industry, again, land division. and or a museum. You know, if just about all of the green along Frome Road is gone, why not take that bit as well? Members of the Parklands Authority were asked for their views on that. And then we come to this really large green, misleadingly coloured green, because the whole point, of course, is to enable buildings in there that would not otherwise get built, supposedly called the proposed active waterfront precinct. And the one saving grace you can say about that is they're not proposing buildings of 20 storeys in that area. It represents 37 hectares, and it would encourage both on-water and off-water development. I cannot imagine what you're going to build on the river, but the zoning change would allow it. A floating pavilion, that's been tried at least twice that I'm aware of. The zone seeks to minimise building footprint, it says here, but there are no height guidance. And leasable areas would be confined to 200 square metres, I think that's what that suggests, for community, cultural, tourism, shop or licensed premises that complement the role and function of the riverbank, because of course you can't just enjoy green space. A lot of things are already allowed in the riverbank zone, but on the right-hand side there's a list of what would be allowed if the zoning goes through. I'm told that the state government is willing to drop this particular proposal, but nothing in writing has emerged to confirm that unofficial advice. And again, the Parklands Authority was asked for their views on that. Feedback from, there was a special meeting of APLA, wasn't there, Stephanie, to consider all this. So with that zone out of the way, that consultation that went on from the 15th of September to the 27th of October. Now I want to play this video.
Keep going.
Normally with these things there's a process of community consultation.
Let's get on with it then. Start consulting. Go out, listen to people's concerns, take them on board.
And then?
We can start building.
That's not how consultation works.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not how it's meant to work.
Well, phone broke.
The key is to show people we're listening.
And would this
Let them know we want input, feedback.
Those are just words.
Good words.
Engagement.
There's another.
And will this consultation change our
It
plans?
will shape them, inform them. It's all part of having a mature debate.
If one side has no intention of conceding, then it's not a mature debate.
Yes, it is.
It isn't.
It is.
It isn't.
It is.
It isn't.
It
That is
is.
not a mature debate.
Yes, it is, and I just won. Now let's get moving.
I rest my case. So the consultation on the Code Amendment asked, the state government's vision is to turn the Riverbank precinct into a premier sporting, educational, biomedical precinct. Do you agree that it will work for those purposes? Yes or no? Last time I looked, 85% of people had said no, which is rather ironic because that's exactly what it will do. It's the equivalent of asking, will that work as an execution device? Or, is a machine gun a very good method for killing people? Yes, it is. Doesn't mean the consultation was loaded, or, another way of putting it is that the poor people in Planning SA, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, were not giving you the opportunity to question the government's vision. They were only giving you the opportunity to comment on the tool that they were releasing to implement the government's vision. Nevertheless, I think with the plethora of submissions that have been made, the doubt that has been cast on the government's vision might just have got through. And I call this fake consultation for more than one reason. It was not just the wrong question being answered, but the consultation was really fake because they'd started work based on the success of their planning code changes even before they'd released the draft planning code. That picture of a theodolite in Bonython Park was taken before the planning code amendment was released. I stopped to ask the surveyor what they were doing and he said, we're just checking out where the new car park's going to go. I kid you not. Right there next to the river, quite some way away. I'm not a surveyor or a geotechnical engineer, but I presume they do need to do that if they're going to build a massive 3-storey car park. Drilling to check the groundwork on Port Road in Park 25, opposite the site of the proposed new Women's and Children's Hospital, which cannot be built there unless and until the zoning has changed, but we're going ahead and hiring these people to do this work on the assumption that the planning code will be changed. That's on Port Road, opposite the proposed site of the Women's and Children's Hospital. Ironically, there is a state government document that says consultation with the public must be genuine. And the other thing that really, really annoys me is that I heard one of the executives who's charged with bringing this vision to reality say to a meeting of the City Council, or it might have been the Parklands Authority, I can't remember, all the areas that will be rezoned will still be part of the parklands. They'll still be... And all of those areas there along North Terrace are still subject to Kelly's... They're unlisted, okay, but they're still part of the parklands, but they're not listed on the National Heritage, right? But, I mean, the whole idea of the parklands was north, south, east, west terraces. You do the building within the terraces, and everything on the other side is supposed to be parklands. They're all supposedly parklands, but this is what they have in them. Not all of these were recently put there, of course. That building's now heritage listed. And this is what's coming in Festival Plaza, part of Park 26. Rowing sheds. The Dancy Favell Cricket Academy. How many of you knew that was there? Multi-storey building to train cricketers indoors, as you need to. And this whole area leased to either the Memorial Drive Tennis Club or Tennis SA is off limits to the public behind fences, about 8 hectares, I think it is. And it goes on, car parks, and this area, which is Helen Mayo Park, as it was a couple of years ago. The fences are down now. You can now walk on top of that mound, but that's contaminated soil, and that's where the Premier, part of the area on which the Premier wants to put his stadium and has already put his hotel. Which brings me back to the beginning again. What are we going to do about it? What is the vision for 2070? What could possibly be better than what we've got now, which is this ad hoc diminution of the parklands, time after time after time. The Parklands Association, we spend so much time reacting to the latest attack. What I'd much, much rather do is build up community support for the value of the parklands as a whole. So a great... my motto is that the parklands will be protected only when sufficient number of people demand that they are protected. But of course, there needs to be a legal mechanism. This is totally ineffective for the purpose. The Adelaide Parklands Act contains nothing other than statutory principles, which can be ignored, that can protect the parklands. The only clause in it which is remotely connected with restoring any lost parklands is this one. Steps regarding change in intended use of the land. If there's a part of the parklands that's not being used for its intended purposes, you want to change it, this is what you've got to do. Produce a report to make the land what would be required in order to make the land suitable for public use as parklands. Now, when they decided they were going to build a new Royal Adelaide Hospital, this section was invoked. Eventually. They started building the new hospital, I don't know, back about 2011, 2012. They announced it even earlier than that. So they had years and years to decide what they might do to restore the old RAH to parklands. But in the end, a bureaucrat was consigned to draft a report of 1.5 pages saying, oh, it would be too expensive, we're not going to do it. So that's the only mechanism. It was a tick box affair, and that's totally ineffective. So therefore, this Act, I think we can agree, is useless for the purpose of protecting the parklands. Which leaves us with a really, really big open question. What new governance arrangements might be suitable? Now, I'm not going to stand here and be prescriptive. I don't have the answer. I think the Central Park Conservancy might be an idea worth looking at, but I'm not, nailing myself to that, or I'm actually not 100% familiar with how it works, but it might be a starting point to start looking at. I think these are the principles, and I stress this is only my view, not necessarily the view of the Adelaide Parklands Association, but any governance arrangements, I think, have to be above party politics. We don't want politicians of various parties treating the parklands as a plaything over and over and over again for decades to come. Managing the parklands is a huge financial burden on the City of Adelaide. Something like $17 million a year is what the former Lord Mayor Martin Haese said it costs. He might have been underestimating it. Given the world significance of the Adelaide parklands, I think it's inappropriate that only the City Council ratepayers contribute to that. I think there should be a more reliable or diverse stream of income in order to maintain them. And of course, some public involvement in decision making. And fourthly, and probably most importantly, some form of words, a trust that would prevent the type of exploitation that we've seen for decades past. And something a lot better than the current Section 23 of the Adelaide Parklands Act to prevent further losses and gradually claw back lost sites where possible. Immediately, obviously, reject the current rezoning proposals. Kelly mentioned earlier that there had been a nomination for state heritage listing in the last century, 1986, and then another one again in 2009. And that saga is amazing. Since 2009, no action was taken until 2017, and then the State Heritage Council decided to examine the nomination. They sent it out to a consultancy firm, Dash Architects. Please prepare a report for us on whether or not the parklands should have state heritage listing. That report took about 7 or 8 months to come back. And you only need to satisfy one of the criteria in the Heritage Act to be state heritage listed. I'm pretty sure they came back to say all, or if not all, then nearly all of the criteria in the State Heritage Act were satisfied by the Adelaide Parklands. It's a no-brainer. Let's list it. That report landed on the desk of the Environment Minister, David Spears, on the 6th of December 2018, nearly 3 years ago. Yes, but despite the fact that they might have had a conflict of interest, they actually recommended that it should be done. And as Stephanie so eloquently described to you earlier, World Heritage listing would be a great thing as well, and stop the destruction. And I'd just like to finish on this, because occasionally you hear, and this is usually by columnists in the Advertiser, David Penberthy for one, this bit of the parklands isn't worth protecting, especially in the context of the stadium that the Premier wants to put on so-called degraded land. Bits of the parklands aren't worth protection. Rymel Park hosted a rubbish dump up until the late 1950s. There are countless spots within the Adelaide Parklands that hosted former rubbish dumps. Many of them, well, all of them, and all council depots, they've been restored. They can be restored, but this is probably the best example. Do you know where that is? Is that familiar? On the left, that's Deviation Road, which is now closed. It's a bike path. Yeah, sewerage works. What later became SA Water, formerly EWS. That's James Congdon Drive on the right, and Port Road in the foreground. That was basically that industrial site, with a few changes over the years, for 132 years, from 1878 to 2010. 1878 to 2010. Jane Lomax Smith, when she was in Cabinet, was largely responsible for converting it from that to that. It's the same spot. I took that with a drone. I wasn't around to take that one, but I tried to get the drone to capture the exact same spot, James Congdon Drive, the railway line and Port Road. That is known as the Narnunga Urban Forest. Coincidentally, the Crows wanted to put their headquarters there after they got knocked back for the aquatic centre. Really, that was their second choice. And Iris Ivaniki is going to be leading a guided walk in this park on the Sunday the 14th of November. So it's possible. Reclaiming, restoration is possible and worth pursuing, quite in addition to fighting off the current challenges. That's my vision for 2070, that more of the parklands can be looking like that instead of like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane, for your rousing presentation.